Aircraft carriers have long been the ultimate symbols of naval power, but not every giant warship ever made it to the sea. Some were partially built, while others never progressed beyond the drawing board. Yet many introduced revolutionary ideas that later influenced future carrier designs. In this video, we'll count down the aircraft carriers that were cancelled before entering service, explore what could have happened if these floating giants had actually taken to the seas. The Joffre-class aircraft carrier. This was a fleet aircraft carrier designed by France before the outbreak of the Second World War, measuring about 236 meters in length and displacing around 20,000 tons. She was designed to operate approximately 40 aircraft. Construction began in 1938, but the German invasion of France in 1940 forced work to stop before the ship could be completed. After France surrendered, the unfinished hull was abandoned and later scrapped. Had she entered service, the Joffre-class would have provided the French Navy with its first modern purpose-built fleet carrier, greatly strengthening France's naval aviation capabilities before and during the war. The Soviet Project 85. Project 85 was a post-war fleet aircraft carrier proposed by the Soviet Union as part of its effort to develop a true blue water navy. The design measured roughly 273 meters long with a planned displacement of about 28,000 tons, and it was expected to carry around 40 to 50 aircraft. Although the project advanced through several design stages, it was cancelled in the late 1950s as the Soviet leadership shifted its focus towards submarines and missile technology. Resources were instead directed towards nuclear submarines and guided missile ships. If completed, Project 85 would have marked the Soviet Navy's first operational conventional fleet carrier and significantly expanded Soviet naval air power. The German Graf Zeppelin II. Graf Zeppelin II was the second ship of Germany's Graf Zeppelin-class aircraft carriers, intended to support the Kriegsmarine during the Second World War. She measured approximately 262.5 meters in length, displaced around 34,088 tons, and was designed to operate about 42 aircraft. Construction progressed after work on the lead ship was suspended, but the project was ultimately cancelled in 1943 as Germany prioritized U-boat production and other wartime needs. The incomplete vessel was broken up before the war ended. Had she entered service, Graf Zeppelin II could have provided Germany with valuable carrier-based air support for Atlantic and Arctic naval operations. The Soviet Project Kostromitinov. Project Kostromitinov was an ambitious Soviet aircraft carrier concept developed during the final years of the Second World War. The purpose carrier was expected to measure around 280 meters in length, displace approximately 40,000 tons, and operate roughly 50 aircraft. Despite its promising design, the project was cancelled because post-war priorities shifted towards rebuilding the country and expanding submarine forces instead of constructing large carriers. The design remained only on paper and never reached construction. If built, Project Kostromitinov would have accelerated Soviet carrier development by decades and given the Soviet Navy an earlier experience with fleet carrier operations. The Verdun. The Verdun was a proposed French aircraft carrier intended to become the country's first nuclear-powered fleet carrier during the Cold War. The design called for a length of approximately 286 meters, a displacement of around 45,000 tons, and an air wing of about 60 aircraft. Raising construction costs and changing defense priorities led the French government to cancel the project in the 1960s before construction began. France instead continued operating the smaller Flamenco-class carriers. Had Verdun entered service, she would have greatly enhanced France's ability to conduct long-range naval aviation and power projection without relying on conventional propulsion. The CVA-01. CVA-01 was a large fleet aircraft carrier planned by the United Kingdom to replace its aging post-war carriers and maintain global naval presence. She was designed to measure about 272 meters long, displace approximately 54,400 tons, and carry around 50 aircraft including advanced strike fighters. Although the design was highly capable, the British government cancelled the project in 1966 because of severe budget constraints and a shift in defense policy towards land-based aircraft. The cancellation marked the end of Britain's conventional fleet carrier program for decades. If completed, CVA-01 would have preserved the Royal Navy status as a major carrier operating force throughout the Cold War. The Malta-class aircraft carrier. The Malta-class was the largest aircraft carrier ever planned by the Royal Navy during the final years of the Second World War. Each ship was designed to measure around 274 meters in length and approximately 58,626 tons and carry between 80 and 108 aircraft. Although construction began on some ships, the program was cancelled after the war because of budget reductions and changing strategic requirements. None of the carriers were completed, and the partially built hulls were dismantled. Had they entered service, the Malta-class would have provided Britain with true supercarriers capable of operating large and powerful post-war naval air groups. The Project 1153 Orel. Project 1153 Orel was a Soviet nuclear-powered fleet aircraft carrier intended to rival American supercarriers during the Cold War. Their design measured approximately 320 meters long, displaced about 72,000 tons, and was expected to carry around 70 aircraft including fighters and airborne early warning aircraft. Despite its advanced capabilities, the program was cancelled in the late 1970s because of financial limitations and political disagreements within the Soviet leadership. Development instead shifted towards the smaller Kiev-class and later Ulyanov's project. Had Project 1153 entered service, it would have transformed Soviet naval aviation into a true global carrier force. The Soviet Project 1160 Orel. Project 1160 Orel was the Soviet Union's first proposal for a true supercarrier capable of matching the largest carriers operated by the United States Navy. The massive design measured around 320 meters in length, displaced approximately 72,000 tons, and was planned to operate 70 to 80 aircraft. The project was cancelled in the early 1970s because of enormous costs, industrial limitations, and opposition from senior naval and political leaders. Soviet planners instead pursued smaller and less expensive carrier designs. If completed, Project 1160 would have given the Soviet Navy unprecedented blue water power projection and significantly altered the balance of naval aviation during the Cold War. The USS United States CVA-58. USS United States CVA-58 was a revolutionary American supercarrier designed to serve as the world's first carrier specifically built to launch nuclear-capable strategic bombers. She measured an impressive 332.9 meters in length, displaced approximately 83,200 tons at a full load, and was designed to carry around 70 aircraft. Construction officially began in 1949, but the program was cancelled only 5 days after the keel was laid because of budget disputes and intense rivalry between the U.S. Navy and the newly established U.S. Air Force. The cancellation triggered the famous revolt of the admirals within the Navy. Had USS United States entered service, she would have fundamentally reshaped American naval strategy and accelerated the development of the modern nuclear-powered supercarrier. With this, we're signing off for today, but we'll see you again in our next video. Until then, bye-bye.